Hello friends, today I'm going to tell you a story that perfectly captures the phrase "Dushman ka dushman dost hota hai." That is, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Just a few weeks ago, something happened that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. Canada and China, two big nations, two stalwarts that were literally at each other's throats in the year 2018, has announced a strategic partnership.
Moving on, is America losing its grip on global influence? It's a question we have all asked ourselves over the last few years, and today, all signs on the ground point to it. A year into Donald Trump's return to the White House, a major new global survey suggests that Trump's America First agenda may be having the opposite effect on U.S. influence worldwide.
Trump called the relationship with Xi Jinping extremely good, stressing the importance of keeping ties strong ahead of his planned visit to China in April.
Yes, you've heard it right. Canada and China, the same countries, the same Canada that arrested Huawei's CFO in 2018, the same China that immediately detained Canada's citizens in retaliation, the same two countries that spent years in bitter diplomatic freeze have signed a strategic partnership. The question is, what changed? What force was so powerful that it brought these two rivals together? The answer, friends, is very simple and very profound. That is American protectionism under Donald J. Trump. And here's the twist that nobody saw coming. While Donald Trump's trade wars were designed to weaken China, they're actually making China even stronger on the global stage. Yes, you must be confused with it, but don't be. By the end of this video, everything will become crystal clear to all of you. Hello, my name is Preetpal Singh, and today you're watching Perspective. Now, first of all, in order to understand Donald Trump's protectionist vision, let me take you back to the year 2016. Donald Trump campaigned on a very simple promise, that is America first. And he told Americans that for decades, other countries have been taking advantage of them, that globalization was destroying American jobs, and that China was actually raping Americans' economy. These were his exact words, and his solution was to build walls. Not just physical walls, but also economic walls around America. And in 2018, same thing happened. Donald Trump launched what we now call as Trump trade wars, a very famous trade war which was started by Donald J. Trump. And he started imposing tariffs on essential imports. An essential imports tariff was imposed on Chinese goods which were worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Now the numbers were staggering, friends. By the year 2019, the average US tariff on Chinese imports has increased and risen from 3.1 to 21%. Now just think about that, a seven-fold increase. And Donald Trump's logic was very, very simple. That is, making Chinese goods expensive, American companies will manufacture at home. And China will suffer and America will prosper. But here, Donald Trump did not understand the economics. And this is why it is very crucial that economics doesn't follow orders. It follows incentives and it follows the principles. Alongside this, economy follows market. And which is why whatever Donald Trump intended to do could not be achieved in the initial term. Now let me take you back to the year 2025. That is the last year when Donald J. Trump again became, for the second term, the President of United States of America. Now in this term, he didn't just continue trade wars, he escalated them. And this time, he wasn't just targeting China, he was targeting a list of countries. And in the year 25-26, Donald Trump has imposed tariffs on Canadian aluminium, Canadian steel, and again Mexican automobiles, European Union products, and also on India. So even close allies weren't spared, friends. And imagine if you were Canada. For decades, you have been America's closest ally. You share the world's longest undefended border and your economies are deeply integrated. But still, Donald J. Trump chooses to impose tariff on your country. And in 2024, Canada-US trade totaled approximately around $900 billion annually. That's enormous. But now suddenly, America is treating you like an economic adversary. And Trump is threatening tariffs of 25% on your goods. He is questioning USMCA, the very trade agreement he himself negotiated. And he is making unpredictable demands. What you would do? You would start looking for alternatives. And that's what Canada actually did. Canada started looking for alternatives. Now, the unexpected alliance of January 2026, a moment that will be studied in international relations textbooks for decades, Canadian Prime Minister and Chinese Premier announced a strategic partnership for economic cooperation and climate action. And the details of it are fascinating. Canada agreed to export critical minerals like lithium, like cobalt, rare earths to China for battery production. And China has committed to investing around $50 billion in Canadian green technology and infrastructure. Alongside that, both the nations have agreed to reduce trade barriers and increase bilateral trade by over 40% over the next 5 years. And also, they've established a joint fund for Arctic research and development. Now, friends, let me just put this in perspective. In 2018, Canada-China relationships were at its lowest point in the modern history. And by the year 2026, they are strategic partners. So the question is, what happened? The strategic brilliance of China's response needs to be studied over here. And here's where it gets really, really interesting. While America was building walls, China was building bridges. After Donald Trump's tariffs were hitting Chinese exports, Beijing didn't just retaliate. They executed a multi-pronged strategy. And that was actually, and frankly speaking, that was brilliant. The strategy first was diversification. The first strategy included that China redirected its supply chains. Instead of relying on American markets, they strengthened ties with ASEAN countries. So with the ASEAN nations, China's trade was up by 43% between 2018 to 2024, which many people did not notice. And with European Union, China became EU's largest trading partner. And with Latin America, bilateral trade exceeded $450 billion by the year 2024. For Africa, under Belt and Road Initiative, over $1 trillion were invested by China. And this strategy of China actually paid China back. And this is actually a great paradox that whereby the American policies which were determined and which were made to make China weak actually ended up making China even stronger than before. And which is why China today stands in front of US, taking its place as the world global power. You should remember one thing, that while Donald Trump was imposing tariffs, China invested heavily in semiconductor manufacturing. Despite US chip restrictions on them, they also invested in artificial intelligence, also invested on quantum computing, and also electric vehicles now, which is dominating the global market. Alongside this, renewable energy technology today, China produces around 80% of the world's solar panels, which is humongous, 70% of lithium-ion batteries in the world, and it is the largest EV market globally. Which is why these two strategies, first one and the second one, made China indispensable. And the credit could be given to the United States of America, paradoxically. See, while America was alienating its allies, not just economically, but geopolitically as well, because recently, if you see, US is demanding Greenland. And Greenland right now is controlled by Denmark, which is a part of NATO. And it is a part of European Union as well. Now, this is not just directly threatening the sovereignty of Denmark, the sovereignty of Greenland, the sovereignty of European Union, it is directly threatening its allies. So while America was busy alienating its allies, China positioned itself as a reliable, predictable partner. They told countries like Canada, countries like Mexico, South Korea that America is very unpredictable and they'll change its policies with every election. But we will offer you stability. We will offer you long-term partnerships. And you know what? It actually worked. And which is why you see the rise of China while US is playing its politics in the world and no one is liking that geopolitics. Now the numbers don't lie. And let me show you some data that will actually shock you. In the year 2017, before the trade wars, US share of the global GDP was around 24.7% and China's share was around 15.8%. US had trade agreements with 20 countries covering 40% of the global GDP. But in 2026, after these trade wars, the data has actually changed. The US shares of the global GDP has been 23.1%, which is declining, and China's shares of the global GDP is 18.6%, which is rising. And US trade agreements are fragmented, are uncertain, and China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is having around 150 countries, is covering around 65% of the global population. But here is the most telling statistic that in 2017, 61% of the countries did more trade with the US than with China, but by the year 2025, that number has flipped. Now 128 countries out of 190 countries in the world trade more with China than with the United States of America. Now friends, this is actually a geopolitical earthquake. And this Canada's example can be seen as a case study. And let's zoom in on Canada because it perfectly illustrates how US protectionism is backfiring US itself. Canada has what China desperately needs. That is critical minerals for technology and batteries. It is having stable energy supplies like oil, like natural gas and uranium. And it is having agricultural products as well. It is having advanced research capabilities, which is why China has what Canada needs. and a massive consumer market of 1.4 billion people, which country doesn't want that? And investment capital, manufacturing capabilities, technology in specific sectors like 5G, artificial intelligence. For 70 years, Canada has chosen US, but now Canada chooses China over US without hesitation. And Trump's tariffs and unpredictability has actually changed the calculus. A Canadian official said in a leaked memo, not official of course, but said that we cannot build our economic future on a foundation of American unpredictability. And this single sentence explains everything about this geopolitics. When America becomes unreliable, China becomes more attractive. Not because China is perfect, but because in a world of uncertainty, even an authoritarian regime can look stable if it's consistent. And this is what we can learn. Now let us just look at the broader pattern. And Canada is not alone over this. And let's look at what is happening globally. Now let's look at Mexico. After Trump threatens to tear up USMCA, Mexico increased trade with China by 34% in 2025. Chinese companies are building factories in Mexico, partly to access North American markets. Ironically, of course. And the next country in line is South Korea. Now, which is caught between American security guarantees and China's economic integration. They are hedging their bets. They are increasing their trade with South Asia and China. And now let us come to European Union. After Donald Trump has criticized NATO, imposed tariffs on European Union goods, also EU-China investment agreements, despite the human rights concerns, has gained renewed interest. And after this recent US demanding Greenland, the tension between European Union and US are at its peak. Now let us come to Australia. Now, despite security tensions with China, they are struggling to replace Chinese markets for iron ore and coal. And alternate buyers don't exist at the same scale. And this pattern is very clear that US protectionism, the deglobalization of US, is pushing its allies into economic orbit of China. Now here's the deepest irony of the entire situation, friends, that Trump wanted to build a wall around America to keep China out. But what he actually did was to build a wall around America that keeps America in. Isolated from its traditional partners. It's like this. Imagine you are in a neighborhood and you are the wealthiest house. You've been helping your neighbors, trading with them, protecting them, but then you suddenly decide everyone is taking advantage of me. So you build a wall around the house. What happens? Your neighbor don't just sit there waiting for you to come back. They start talking to each other. They start trading with each other. They build relationships that don't include you. And one day you realize that you're not protected by that wall. You are actually imprisoned by it. And that's actually what's happening to America right now. Now, since we have discussed in detail about what has actually happened because of Donald Trump's protectionism, but we should also get the full picture. And which is why we have to be balanced over here. This story isn't about China's perfection over American failure. China faces massive challenges. China is facing economic issues, debt crisis. Local government debt has exceeded in China by $13 trillion. Real estate bubble is there in China. There is Evergrande collapse and property sector is in crisis. And there is a demographic collapse as well. Declining population, aging rapidly, youth unemployment, which is officially around 21%, but it is likely more higher. And political issues in China have damaged its economic credibility as well. Xi Jinping's concentration of power creates a succession uncertainty, and which is why Xinjiang, Tibet, Hong Kong, they are having massive human rights concerns as well. Taiwan tensions could explode into a conflict, which is again a strategic issue, and which is why technologically still, China is dependent on the West for advanced chips. Military capabilities are untested in real conflict. Belt and Road Initiative is facing debt defaults in multiple countries. So it isn't about China being invincible. It's about America making unforced errors that hands China its strategic victories. Now the question is what this means for the world and where does this leave us? See, we are witnessing the emergence of a fragmented world order. Block 1 is the US and its closest security allies, that is UK, Australia and Japan, which is focusing on containing China militarily but economically disconnecting. The Block 2 is China and its economic partners, which is increasingly including traditional US allies like Canada, focusing on trade and development but wary of China's political influence. There is Block 3, which is non-aligned nations, that is India, Brazil, Indonesia and others trying to benefit from both the blocks without committing to either. And this fragmentation is dangerous, friends, because when the world isn't cooperating, we can't solve the global problems. Climate change requires global cooperation. Pandemic preparedness requires sharing data and resources. Nuclear proliferation requires coordinated diplomacy, and economic stability requires integrated markets. Trump's protectionism isn't just weakening America's economic position, it's weakening the entire global system that America built after the World War II. The ultimate question, so my friends, let me leave you with a single thought. Was Trump trying to make America great again, or is he accidentally making China great instead? The Canada-China partnership of 2026 isn't just a bilateral deal, it's a symbol that American-led global order is fragmenting, a symbol that US protectionism has consequences that ripple for beyond tariff lines. History will record this, that in trying to isolate China, America isolated itself. And the greatest irony, the trade war designed to weaken China may have given China exactly what it needed, a narrative of American unreliability that pushed other nations into Beijing arms. This is unintended consequence of protectionism, and this is how empires decline. Not with a bang, but with a tariff. What do you think, friends? Is there still time for America to reverse this trend? And can traditional alliances be rebuilt, or have we crossed the point of no return? Let me know your thoughts in the comment below. These are the stories which mainstream media won't tell you with this depth of analysis. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep questioning everything. Thank you, and have a very nice day. Thank you.